Hello. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jane. This is Nick Gradwell of Amberley Innovations. And this afternoon, we're going to be talking in a bit more detail about one specific use case
Mhm.
of Amberley Innovations. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Nick because it's
Yeah.
all down to you from here on in, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and the reason we're doing this, Jane, is because there's a lot of people talk about technology and talk about automation in particular, um, but there are but actually putting some meat on the bones and some reality around this I think is important.
Yeah, an actual real thing that's happened. I think that's much easier to relate to, isn't it, than a kind of hypothetical.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a bit like AI. Everybody's talking AI is doing this, AI is doing that, and I think most people's only real knowledgeable interaction with AI is when they're using their mobile phone and it captures a face and they see the little square around it. I think that's which is a great example. And I think the same is true about automation as well. I think a lot of people know they want to automate their business and improve their business, but they're not. What does that actually mean in reality? And day to day, what changes? What is the process that you go through? So I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about an example that we've used with where we've been working with a private equity firm.
Yep.
Um, and I think a private equity firm's good because the nature of it is they're dealing with lots of different businesses, lots of different systems, lots of different data, and a lot of disparity and disconnection, or often across the whole, across their brands that they have acquired.
I can imagine that you've got companies that were never meant to be anything related to one another suddenly under the same umbrella and having to
Yeah,
talk to one another. You can quite easily see how that could be problematic, and that might be something that where you could come in.
and you're absolutely right. I mean, and one of the key things here is, why would you want to why would you want to pull information together? Why would you want to automate across brands? And I think particularly for things like uh, companies like private equity and venture capital, you know, often there's a lot of information stored in businesses that is valuable to the other businesses, right? And equally, getting sort of consistent reporting and understanding of how businesses are operating is crucial. Um, and then, there are cost savings as well. So you can help remove costs from a business by using one system. So say the same financial system, perhaps the same ERP, perhaps the same CRM, customer relationship management tool. So that, but you can take costs out of the businesses and save the businesses time, effort, and utilize some of the skills of the other businesses. So, I mean, I think one of the example that I'm going to talk about is how one private equity firm I work with, how they went from having a bunch of companies. I think it was about 15 companies, different companies, and they had a different financial system in each, and a
Yeah.
different customer relationship management system in each. Now, some of the companies used the same system but in different ways. Um, so it was a real challenge, and the key thing was, once they'd made a central decision to procure the financial system and the CRM in this case, it was a case of then, so what do we do next? What do we want to automate? How do we make the businesses more efficient? Okay. So what we looked at is we looked at how.
Sorry, I was just going to say. So that's why initially, what prompted them to bring you in was being
Yeah.
at this point where they had these systems, but they needed to integrate all of their companies and were hitting blocks, or they were unsure how to go forward.
Yeah, well, that was it. They just didn't really know how to move forward, and
Yeah.
although they had a technical team in house, it wasn't particularly their specialism,
Yeah.
and they wanted to make sure that they were setting themselves up for the long term, not just hitting their immediate needs, and that which were consistent reporting. I mean, they are a publicly listed company,
Yeah.
so it's important that they do provide accurate forecasting out to the market. Whether that's overplaying it or underplaying it every quarter, they need to get it they need to get that right. And
Yeah,
with
accurate.
20 different companies reporting figures in different ways, made that extraordinarily difficult for them. So that they decided on a CRM, and they decided on a financial platform. And the first piece of work we did was looking at, wasn't which systems are we going to automate, what are we going to automate. It was looking at the data. It was a case of, what does the data look like around all of the different companies, and what data do we need in order to provide accurate forecasting and accurate reporting.
Yeah.
And so that started by, talking to each of the different brands, looking at the out of the box capabilities of the financial system and the out of the box capabilities of the CRM, and making sure that we came up with effectively what we call a master data model to make sure that the data could map across, and in some cases, some businesses were less sophisticated, particularly around their sales side of things, where they weren't tracking, the way they were tracking or forecasting opportunities and new business. We had to put in place, it was on spreadsheets, which was absolutely fine and was working for them. But, to get them to the next level, and actually, for the companies, there's real benefit here as well, because a lot of them are getting a new system.
I was going to say that. But if they've been used to working on spreadsheets and suddenly you're coming in with insight that they simply won't have been able to get from.
Absolutely. Once you get onto a more professional system,
Yeah.
you can start getting insight into that data, but you've got to get that data into the platform first. Equally, you've got businesses who are operating, at the other side, who are very slick, got systems and in place that are working very nicely for them. So it was a case of, some businesses wanted to keep the systems where they are, but then we were pulling data out of those systems and reporting on it, and then in other cases, it was a case of migrating them to a new platform, but also looking at what their future plans were, and rolling those into the roadmap. So we're making sure that each of the companies got the benefits that they would have been doing on their own roadmap as well. And
this is an enormous scope.
Huge project.
Absolutely huge. I mean, as soon as you start talking about it, it's vast. If you can see the amount of work that must go into it from your point of view.
Yes, and that's, there's two key things here: is how do you simplify that as much as possible?
Yeah. And
how do you actually manage that project, end to end? And the key is to keep it as small as possible, and use the right technology to solve the problems. Okay, so once we knew which platforms we were going to be integrating with, so we worked with the private equity firm to help them find some data migration tools that we knew would be broad spectrum, and also some data integration, some platform integration tools as well, that allowed data to transfer from A to B and what have you. As it turned out, the data migration tool was a free piece of software that worked exceptionally well, whereas they had to make an additional investment for the middleware, and we always look for free or open source software where possible. And the reason we do that is because, obviously to keep costs down, but also as a business, because we are looking after that estate for them when it ends. We are technical as a business. And so we don't necessarily need all of the fancy UIs and all the GUIs to make it work. We can give them big efficiency savings and cost savings by allowing us to do the heavy lifting, so they don't need to be technically strong. And that really helps, and we have that ongoing partnership with these businesses moving forward. And in fact, all of the businesses that we work for are happy to do that, because they're saving money anyway, right? So
I guess if they know that you're on board for the long term, that changes the decisions you make up front, doesn't it? You don't have to buy in something that's going to support you going forward, because you're already there to do that. You can, as you say, you can go with I'm not going to say more simple technology, but something that is more, less
fully formed, and that way we can help, absorb our costs into additional costs that would just go on fancy user interfaces. And
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, hard to say though. So once we'd come up with the master data model, we used some middleware. So the CRM, we just had to create one interface from the middleware to the CRM, and one interface from the middleware to the financial platform. So everything then talked through the middleware. Okay. And then every time we wanted to add a new application, it was just a case of adding that interface into the middleware, and then it would automatically talk to both, either or of those platforms. Which was, and to be clear, I think we had in the region of about 15 to 20 different pieces of software that we were integrating into the platform. And that was because some were still using certain marketing tools, others had very specific requirements in their financial tools, so we couldn't just switch these things off.
No, of course.
They need to be over time, and we're still working on this process. We are slowly shutting down various aspects as we build up capabilities within the CRM and capabilities within the financial system. But to start with, we needed to make all the systems talk. And of course, once you get to that point, when you're talking about how systems talk, you get very much into how do the businesses operate, right? How do they do, how do they do month end? What does month end look like to each business?
Practically.
Very practically. I go into this system, or I go into this spreadsheet, and I update these numbers, and then I do this and that and the other. Once you've got all that mapped out and you've got the integration, you understand those integrations, then very, very easy to go. I say very, very easy, but it's much easier at that point.
For your company, maybe, Nick. Maybe not for everyone else.
Well, it's not easy, and it's very detailed, but it's not rocket science either, right? It's not something to be scared of. It's just about being precise and being methodical and working through a very specific process. And once you've got all those processes mapped out, you're in a position to start looking at the automation piece, right? So you've got to automate some of it anyway to do the systems integrations.
Yep.
But then once you're at that point, you can start looking for opportunities to, okay, we looked at that process, but now we've got this system in place or that system in place. We no longer need to do that. Or actually, we need to do this, this, and this. However, we don't need a person to do that. We can start automating it. So although, you go in with the view to automate end to end, you always start, and, we've talked about this before, Jane, we always start with the data, and we start about with the integrations, and then we look at the automations on top of that, because it's very difficult to start automating when you have data in lots and lots of different places on lots and lots of different systems. And you often don't know where it is, or it's very hard to get access to. So
let's finding it as a starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this project took from start to finish for their phase one, so to bring all the brands on, took us about 15 months.
Wow.
So it was, there was a lot of decisions. We were brought in after the procurement phase of the CRM and the financial systems. But I think then they realised how big a particular challenge it is.
Yep.
But now what we're doing is we're working with, and what's really nice is we're working with each of the individual brands to look at how we can automate their businesses better now that they have those key systems integrated. And we're looking at other systems, like marketing systems are being integrated, financial systems. How does that all work, and how does that workflow take place? We can then take the opportunity to work step by step through all of the other organizations and add additional value on top of the original project context. And so far it's been going extremely well. And it's basically, I mean, one of the MDs was saying to me that it's great that he no longer has to worry about making sure to get these various reports. He used to take these reports, put them into a particular format, send them off to the group. Same for the FDs in terms of sales figures, financial figures. It's just done for them, and they're actually now more interested in what the numbers are, rather than getting numbers and looking for insights and looking for opportunities that these more sophisticated platforms provide.
Yeah, which is the basis of your of the use case. Really, that's the outcome that you want. You want people to be able to use the data in the best possible way, rather than scrabbling around to find it or transfer it or translate it into a usable form.
Yeah.
Every month or every.
You're You're exactly right, and I think there's a lot. There is a bit of reticence in the early days that you're opening up the hood and it's not as pretty as you'd like it to be, and therefore it's difficult to let people in. But that every business is like that.
Absolutely.
Every single business is like that. I'm sure, Jane. I mean, we've talked about your business. I
Yeah.
hate to admit it, ours isn't as optimized as it should be, and that's terrible, isn't it?
No.
But equally, but that's where we're here to work with an organisation. It's not a judgment. It's a case of just what, and we're not looking to shoot for the moon. We're looking for incremental improvements throughout that save time, efficiency, and allow them to work on the things that really matter in their businesses.
What I really like is the aspect of going back into the constituent companies and offering them more value. I think that's really interesting, and that would only happen if you had a really good ongoing relationship with the central company.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and the central company now are always happy about this because the overarching PE or venture capital are always happy because the more efficient their businesses are, the more revenue that gets generated and the more profit that's built. So
as businesses they are, aren't they?
Absolutely, and then equally as they all improve, of course, then the insights across the entire group and the share. Actually, what's been really interesting is the amount of sharing that's now taking place across all of the organisations. Joint bids on various projects and clients. I mean, there's a
really interesting.
Yeah, and so that sort of thing is really beneficial, and that's because somebody centrally is saying, do you know what, this will be a really good fit for this organisation, or this project that you're bidding on. If you augmented it with this other business's services, your whole offering is better, and as a consequence, they are seeing an uptick in revenue generation. So not only bottom line but top line, it's starting to drive top line revenues as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's great. It's great. It's a good success story, and for me, it absolutely validates that automation is the way that businesses need to go. Because not just because it makes business easier, it just allows people to do the business that they're in business to do. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think this is where you come back to again and again. Actually, is that it frees you up to really do business rather than the kind of mechanics of it or the difficulties that can. Yeah.
I mean, there's some frightening statistics around how much time people end up working on admin rather than actually working on the business. But But so that in essence, Jane, is how it's quite typical of an engagement we do. We go in. We go in with usually a very specific problem or a very specific question or the general we want to automate.
Yeah.
But and again, the people side of it is key. So change management is always front and center in these projects. But when we're just looking from the technical side of things, it's always data first and data and systems first before we start looking at automation. But that's not to say you don't realise that the businesses don't realise an awful lot of benefit from the data and the integration piece. And then it's just icing on the cake after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's brilliant, Nick. Thank you for that. What I was going to say is that if anybody watching this has any questions on any aspect of this use case or any of our previous interviews, do get in touch. Nick's website is I don't know, what is it?
I was going to say, is that somebody coming to your door to?
Somebody ring the doorbell, and yeah, it is, but it's okay. I'm not the only person here.
Maybe they just want to talk about automation, Jane. Maybe
they do. Anyway, I'll put some links in the comments.
Yes, it's AmberleyInnovations.com.
Amberley Innovate, of course.
Wonderful.
But yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll be back soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Jane. Cheers. Thanks.